Alright, so in order to start creating graphical user interfaces for our Java applications, we're going to start taking a look at the Javafx library, how to actually use it, how to go through the design phase of creating the visual representation for our interfaces, and then how to actually implement that. But before I actually get into everything with the Javafx library and actually using this in our Java applications, I want to first take a moment to actually consider why it is that we want to start creating graphical user interfaces in the first place. So I want to look at the distinction between a command line interface, or a CLI, essentially the process that we've been going through for all of our applications up to this point, and then compare that against the more visual graphical user interfaces, or GUIs. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is compare the process of setting up the coding environment and then actually writing out an application through the command line interface, and then also take a look at doing that through the desktop, more visual process, and then actually doing the same thing, essentially just writing out the program and then trying to execute it. That last point, when I try to execute it, that particular part will just use both, or both of those will use the command line interface. Okay, so we'll go ahead and take a look at least at the first couple of steps where we move to the proper location. So in order to do that, I've set up my Mac terminal. So I want to move to a particular folder where I'm going to write this program. So in order to do that, I have to provide some kind of command to this interface. So this is going to be the cd command, which will be used to change the directory. So I'm going to move to my desktop. And then once I've moved to my desktop, I can then go ahead and take a look at the files that are present on my desktop. So in order to do that, there's yet another command that I have to provide. So take a look at all of the files that are available, and the main one that I want to go to is going to be this Java projects file. So that'll be this file that we have right here. So then we'll go ahead and move into that. And so then once I'm inside of this file, I can take a look at what's in there already, but when I do this ls command, we'll see that there's nothing inside of it yet. So I want to go ahead and actually create the Java file itself. So to do that, I'm going to need yet another command. So the command to do this is going to be touch. So I'll use that, and then the name of the file that I want to make. In this case, I'm just going to make a fairly simple sort of dummy file for this. So I'll just make something like test.java. So then once I've done that, I can check again, ls, see that I've actually created that file, and then I can go ahead and actually open that and start writing some code for it. So to do that in this case, I'm just going to do it through a text editor that I'm fairly comfortable with using. To open this text editor through the command line, I'm going to use this supl command and then provide the name of the file that I want to open. So that'll go ahead and open up my Sublime text editor. And so now inside of this text editor window, I can go ahead and start typing in the code. So I'll give it a header for the class. I can then also go ahead and give it a main method. So we'll do something like public static void main, and then provide the one parameter for the main method. And then inside of here, I can provide a single line, maybe something like a simple print statement, and then we'll just print something fairly trivial to the console. Go ahead and save that. And then coming back into here, if I want to actually execute this particular part, I'll do the same way for either one of them, since this is a pretty straightforward way of approaching it. Essentially, I would just go ahead and compile it. So I'd give it my Java command, and then provide the name of the file. Go ahead and compile that, and then we can just run it. So we'll just do the Java command, and then the name of the class file that we created when we compiled it. And then that'll just print to the console the contents of that file. So just print out that hello world. Okay. So the general process that you're seeing here in order to use this command line interface is that you have to be familiar with a lot of different commands in order to accomplish the task that you're trying to do. So you've got to make sure you know how to use each one of those commands. You'll also notice that because of the fact that whenever I navigate to a new directory, I have to use this ls command in order to see the contents of that. It's not very visually engaging. So let's compare that against a GUI. So we'll go ahead and move to the desktop. So in this case now, I'm looking at the desktop directory for my Mac. And we can actually see all of the files that are inside of this directory. So all these folders that I have located right here, including this one file. And then from there, I can actually go ahead and just find the folder that I'm interested in. So I know that this Java projects folder is what I've been using. So I'll go ahead and open that up. And we'll find that inside of there, we have the files that I'm interested in. So we've got our Java file and that class file that I generated. So if I want to go ahead and just take a quick look at this. So let's say I want to go ahead and remove both of these and just start this process over from scratch. Go ahead and close this as well. And so then if I want to go ahead and make another file, one of the things I could do is to just go ahead and open up my my set of tasks or my applications here. We'll go to the developer tools, particular location that I set up here, and from there I can go ahead and find the Sublime text, just open that up, and then from here I can go ahead and start creating that file. So first we'll just go ahead and save this so that I've got it set up as a Java file. And then from there I can go ahead and rewrite that code. So we'll do something like public class test, give it a main method, and give it that single statement. Okay. And then from here, if I want to go ahead and compile and run this, again, go ahead and clear the contents of my terminal, and then just take a look at these two steps again. Okay. So at this point now, you can kind of see a bit of a distinction between how we approach this through a command line interface versus a GUI. You'll notice that the set of steps that I have to go through, it doesn't really require that I am familiar with any of these commands. We can see that it's more visually engaging because of the fact that I can just identify visually a particular location that I want to navigate to, as opposed to trying to keep track of this sort of map of directories and files that I'm trying to look for. Connecting to that a little bit closely, we can also see that it's a bit more intuitive in this general approach because of the fact that everything is more visually engaging. So in a general sense, if you're dealing with this from the perspective of a non-programmer, having this graphical user interface tends to be a much better approach than trying to use a command line interface where you are essentially asking a series of questions through the terminal of some kind, whether that's the terminal on your Mac or maybe some kind of terminal window in an IDE. But from the perspective of a programmer, it's important to keep in mind that there are going to be certain circumstances where it would actually make more sense to try to use the command line interface. But rather than going through the details about the advantages of a command line interface, I would instead like to leave it to you to consider for a moment what those advantages might happen to be. So as one thing to kind of wrap up on this particular part of this series of videos, I want to leave it to you to actually consider what those advantages might actually be, and then provide your own inputs or your own insights if you'd like to in the comments of this video. Okay, so also to wrap up on this, in the next part we're going to move into just a quick overview of the Javafx library. So we'll start with a simple introduction of that. I'll talk a little bit about precisely what it is and some of the features that it has to offer. We'll also take a look at a very simple implementation of a Javafx application, and then we'll slowly transition into more depth on actually trying to add the visual elements, so things like containers and controls that we'll see a little bit later, to actually start fleshing out these Javafx applications.